They called it the glass house because every wall seemed to hold a window, and every window held a reflection of someone who wasn't quite there. It was past midnight when the dispatch came through: an elderly man, natural causes, pickup required from the outskirts of Portland. My partner, Luis, groaned when he saw the address. Glass house again? That place creeps me out, man. I didn't say anything. Places rarely scared me anymore. But something in his tone, the kind of half-joking dread that comes from experience, made me check the location twice. The client's name was Arthur Hennings, age 91. No family listed. The drive out took nearly an hour. By the time we arrived, the drizzle had turned the gravel road into mud, and the house itself shimmered under the moonlight, all steel beams and glass panels. The kind of architecture that feels more like a display case than a home. Inside, the lights were on. The nurse who met us at the door looked pale and tired. He passed around 10, she said softly. Peaceful. He just stopped breathing while looking out the window. She led us down a hallway lined with mirrors, tall, thin sheets of glass that reflected us in fragments. My reflection looked thinner, ghostlier, stretched by the curved surface. Luis muttered, Man, who puts mirrors opposite each other like that? It's like being stuck between two worlds. When we reached the bedroom, the old man was still sitting upright in a recliner, facing a wide panoramic window that overlooked the forest below. His eyes were open. I'd seen that before: muscles stiffen, eyes dry out. But there was something about his gaze, focused, like he was watching something beyond the trees. Luis and I worked quietly, lifting him from the chair to the stretcher. That's when I noticed the reflection. In the window, we looked wrong. Our movements lagged, half a second behind reality. At first, I thought it was the light. But when I blinked, the reflection didn't. Luis, I whispered. Look. He glanced up, frowned, then froze. In the glass, Arthur's reflection was still in the chair, staring at us, though his body was already covered by the sheet. Luis swore softly. Let's get the hell out. We wheeled the stretcher through the hall. Each mirror we passed seemed to multiply our images, us, the stretcher, and sometimes, something extra. A faint silhouette, hovering behind us, too tall to be the old man, too still to be one of us. Outside, the rain had stopped. The forest was silent, almost expectant. When I opened the van's rear door, the inside light flickered, then steadied. Luis climbed in first. You good? He asked. Yeah, I lied. I did one last check before closing the door. In the window of the house, through the reflection of trees and rain, I saw Arthur's face, pressed against the glass from the inside, eyes wide open, as if he'd never left. We drove in silence. Halfway back to the morgue, Luis turned on the radio, maybe to drown out the quiet. But the static between channels sounded too much like a whisper. When we arrived, I helped roll the gurney into cold storage. Luis went to sign paperwork. I stayed behind a moment, staring at the tag that read Hennings, Arthur, DOA 12:04 a.m. Behind me, I heard a faint tap. The kind of sound you get when someone's fingernail brushes glass. The cold drawers are metal, not glass. But the window in the prep room, small, square, overlooking the parking lot, had fogged over from the humidity. And in the center of that fog was a perfect handprint. 5 fingers. Pressed from the inside. I told myself it was condensation, maybe from when we brought the body in. Still, when I wiped it away, my own reflection seemed to hesitate before moving. For a split second, I thought I saw 3 of me, one real, one reflected, and one that blinked just a moment too late. I left the room. I didn't turn the lights off. The next evening, dispatch called again, another pickup, same area. Different address this time, but when I checked the map, it was just a few blocks from the glass house. Luis refused to come. "You go if you want, man. I'm done with that side of town." So I went alone. When I pulled up, I noticed something strange, the property across the street. It was empty, overgrown. But in the reflection of my windshield, I saw the glass house, bright as day, even though it was pitch black outside. It was as if the house only existed in reflection. I don't remember getting out of the van. One moment I was sitting there staring, the next, I was standing by the gate. Every window of the glass house was dark, except one. The bedroom, faintly glowing blue. I thought I saw someone in there. A man sitting in the recliner again. Watching. I turned to leave. That's when I noticed my own reflection in the van's window. Except I wasn't alone. Behind me stood a figure, thin, transparent, his hand resting on my shoulder. When I spun around, nothing. Just the wind in the trees. But the reflection stayed. And when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't Arthur anymore. It was me. That night, I covered every mirror in my apartment with towels. It didn't help. Because when the lights go out, I still see him, my reflection, standing behind the glass, a second too slow, smiling when I'm not. And every time I walk past a window now, I can feel the cold, faint pressure of fingers against the other side, as if something is still trying to get out. You'd think the dead would all weigh the same after a while. But they don't. Some feel light, almost hollow, like the world already forgot them. Others feel impossibly heavy, as if the air itself doesn't want to let them go. The call came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Name, Samuel Drake. Age, 74. Cause, cardiac arrest, found alone in his house on the south side of Portland. It was routine, or it should have been. But when I arrived, the paramedics were still there, whispering near the door. One of them, a kid named Ryan, looked pale. "You're the removal guy, right?" he asked. "You might need a hand." We tried lifting him, but, he didn't finish. I walked in. The air inside was dense and still, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. The house was spotless but quiet, too quiet. No TV hum, no ticking clock, just that deep, muffled silence that fills a place when someone's been alone too long. Mr. Drake was lying on the living room rug. Peaceful face. Hands folded on his chest. When I checked the death certificate on the counter, I noticed something odd. The paramedics had written body weight, 142 pounds. That's average for a man his age. But when I bent down to lift him, it felt wrong. The sheet tightened under my fingers. My spine screamed. It was like trying to move a granite statue. "Help me with this," I told Ryan. We tried together, nothing. Not even an inch. He shook his head. "Man, this doesn't make sense. We carried a guy twice his size last week." I looked around the room. There were photos on the walls, all the same woman. Young, dark-haired, always smiling, always standing next to Samuel. Then, one picture caught my eye. It was newer. She was older there, in a hospital gown, thin and pale. The frame was cracked, and someone had placed it face down on the mantel. I turned it over. On the back, written in neat handwriting, "Forgive me for leaving first." We tried again. I lifted the shoulders, Ryan took the feet. The moment we cleared him off the carpet, I swear the air grew thicker, like the house itself didn't want to exhale. The stretcher creaked. "Jesus," Ryan muttered. What is he, 300 pounds? The weight wasn't physical. I could feel it, the kind of heaviness that lives in your bones, not your arms. Halfway to the van, Ryan stopped. You feel that? What? The sound. Like a heartbeat. I froze. There it was, faint, rhythmic, slow. Coming not from the house, not from us, but from inside the body bag. Ryan's eyes went wide. He's alive? I unzipped the top half. No breath. No pulse. But the chest rose slightly, like air moving through something hollow. The heartbeat stopped. We zipped it back up and got out of there fast. At the morgue, Luis was waiting, yeah, the same Luis who'd sworn he'd never work that side of town again. When he saw me struggling with the gurney, he frowned. Looks like you're wrestling a piano. Feels like one too. He grabbed the other end, and together we lifted the body into the freezer drawer. The moment the door clicked shut, the pressure lifted. It was like the air finally let go. Luis crossed his arms. You ever notice how some of them fight it? What do you mean? He nodded toward the drawer. Some bodies, you can feel they don't want to stay down. Like they're holding onto something. Guilt, maybe. Or secrets. He wasn't joking. Luis never joked about that. Later that night, I came back to do paperwork. The facility was empty, lights humming softly overhead. I could still feel that weight in my arms, phantom strain. When I reached for the file cabinet, I noticed something. The drawer marked Drake, Samuel wouldn't open. All the others slid fine. But his? It felt sealed shut from the inside. Then I heard it. A whisper, faint, dry, almost like a breath scraping against metal. I pressed my ear to the drawer. It's not her fault. I stumbled back. My clipboard clattered to the floor. When I opened the drawer again, finally forcing it loose, the body lay still. But there was something new. On the inside of the door, frost had formed in the shape of a handprint. Not open, clenched, like a fist pressing outward. I checked the coroner's notes the next day. Samuel Drake's wife, Eleanor, had died 3 months prior. Cancer. Her remains had been cremated, but the urn had never been picked up. It was still sitting in a local funeral home. I drove there. The attendant handed me the urn, dust-covered, with a polite smile. No one ever came, he said. He called once, though. Asked if she could be brought home somehow. I took the urn to the morgue. It felt light. Almost too light. When I placed it beside Samuel's body, something in the air shifted, a slow, deep exhale. The metal of the drawer stopped creaking. The frost began to melt. For the first time since that night, the weight lifted. I stood there, staring at the two of them, one silent, one ash. And I realized. He hadn't been heavy because he couldn't let go. He'd been heavy because he refused to leave her behind. That night, I dreamt of them. They were sitting together on the living room rug, like in the old photos. No pain, no silence. Just peace. When I woke, I checked the prep room camera feed, a habit of mine. The motion sensors had gone off around 3:12 a.m. The footage showed the drawer sliding open by itself. For 3 seconds, the room filled with a faint white mist. Then it cleared. The drawer was empty. Both the body and the urn were gone. I filed the report as equipment malfunction. No one questioned it. But sometimes, when I carry a new body to cold storage, I swear I feel that same pressure, a reminder that some people leave this world quietly, and others have to be released. And in those moments, the silence feels heavy again. Like grief condensed into air. Like love that forgot how to die. You'd think you'd get used to seeing the dead. But you never really get used to their eyes. Most people assume they're closed, peaceful, tidy. But the truth is, they rarely stay that way. Sometimes they half open, sometimes they twitch because of gases or nerves. It's just biology. That's what I tell myself, anyway. It was raining again when the dispatch came through. Name, Claire Whitmore. Age, 58. Cause, respiratory failure, home hospice. I arrived around 11:30 p.m. The nurse met me at the door, young, maybe mid-20s, exhausted. She said Claire had gone quietly, about an hour before. The house was warm. Too warm. There was the faint scent of lavender oil and melted candle wax. A calm place, almost serene, until I stepped into the bedroom. Claire was lying on the bed, hands folded neatly on her stomach. But her eyes were open, staring toward the ceiling, not wide in terror, not rolled back, just aware. She kept trying to say something before she passed, the nurse whispered. But her lungs, she couldn't. I think she wanted to see her daughter. Where's the daughter now? I asked. The nurse hesitated. They haven't spoken in years. I nodded and got to work. But as I slid the sheet beneath Claire, her head turned slightly, just enough for her eyes to meet mine. It was a trick of movement, I told myself. Dead muscles sometimes shift when you move the body. But something about those eyes made it hard to breathe. They weren't glassy like most. They still had color, that faint green of rain-washed glass. And they were focused. When I lifted her into the stretcher, I felt a chill crawl up my neck. The air conditioning had kicked off. The candles on the nightstand flickered once and died. I zipped the bag halfway, leaving the face exposed. Normally, I closed them before we move. But I couldn't. Her eyelids were stiff, like she was forcing them open. Ms. Whitmore, I murmured without thinking, you can rest now. Nothing. Then the faintest sound, air escaping lungs long stilled. A sigh. I zipped the bag the rest of the way and wheeled her out. At the van, I felt it again, that presence. Like someone was watching from behind the tinted glass. I loaded her in, shut the door, and climbed into the driver's seat. Halfway down the street, I caught movement in the rearview mirror. The bag shifted. Just an inch. Settling, I muttered to myself. Just settling. But when I glanced again, I froze. The zipper had slid open halfway, on its own. And through the small gap, a single green eye stared back at me, unblinking. I slammed the brakes. The van skidded on wet asphalt. The world fell silent except for my heartbeat. When I turned on the overhead light, the bag was closed again. Perfectly sealed. But I didn't imagine that I know I didn't. Back at the morgue, Luis was doing inventory. He raised an eyebrow when he saw my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I have. He helped me unload the body. We moved her to the prep room. As I unzipped the bag, he whistled low. Damn. Pretty eyes. I shot him a look. Don't. He shrugged. I mean it respectfully, man. Some of them still look present, you know? Too present. We tried to close her eyelids. First manually, then with medical pads, then with the small plastic caps we use under the lids. Every time, within minutes, they'd open again. Luis frowned. That's new. After the third attempt, he gave up and left to finish paperwork. I stayed. Under the fluorescent light, Claire's eyes seemed brighter, like they were catching something I couldn't see. I checked her file again. Survived by one daughter, Rebecca Whitmore, contact unknown. In the notes section, the nurse had scribbled. Patient repeatedly asked if her daughter would forgive her. It hit me then. That look. It wasn't fear. It was waiting. I don't know what came over me, but I pulled out my phone and started searching. There were dozens of Whitmores in the area. Then I found one with the same emergency contact number listed in an old insurance file. I called. A woman answered. Her voice was hoarse, guarded. Who is this? Ma'am, I'm sorry to disturb you. I work with the removal service. Your mother, Claire Whitmore. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I looked back at Claire. Her eyes were open again, but softer now. Not pleading, just hopeful. I went outside for air. When I came back, Luis was pale as chalk. She moved, he said quietly. What? She's on her side now. Look. Sure enough, Claire's body was turned slightly toward the door, toward where I'd been standing moments earlier. Luis muttered a prayer under his breath. Man, I'm out. You finish whatever this is. He left. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a long time, not sure what to do. Then I whispered. She tried to call you, Rebecca. She really did. The lights flickered once. And for the first time, her eyes finally began to close. Slowly, gently, like a sigh of relief. When the daughter came the next morning, she was quiet. She didn't cry. She just stood beside her mother, brushing her hair back. She always hated dying alone, she said softly. She thought if she kept her eyes open, she might see me walk through the door. I nodded. Maybe she did. The woman smiled faintly. Then I guess she can rest now. That night, I went home and stared at my ceiling for hours. The image of those green eyes stayed with me, not in fear, but in a kind of strange peace. But as I drifted to sleep, I turned toward the window. Outside, in the reflection of the glass, two faint green lights hovered in the darkness. Watching. Not haunting, just waiting. And I realized, maybe some souls don't close their eyes because they're afraid of death. Maybe they're afraid they'll miss the moment someone finally comes back. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the police had gone, after the coroner's van took what was left of that boy's body, after the detectives finished their quiet questions and thinly veiled disbelief, I sat alone in my apartment with the mirror I had brought from the glass house. I told myself I'd destroyed all of them. That I'd shattered the cursed glass to dust. But one piece remained, small, about the size of my palm, tucked into the pocket of my jacket like a souvenir from hell. I didn't remember doing it. Maybe I just wanted proof that it had all really happened. The shard leaned now against the far wall of my living room, reflecting the faint amber of the streetlight outside. I watched it for hours, waiting for it to move, to breathe, to whisper like the others. But it didn't. It only reflected me. And that, somehow, was worse. The next morning, I received a letter. It was folded neatly inside an unmarked envelope, slipped under my door. No return address. No handwriting on the front. Inside, a single sheet of yellow paper. The typewritten words read, "You were chosen because you look into them longer than anyone else. The mirror only needs one set of eyes to live. Now that the others are gone, you must keep looking." My hands trembled so hard I almost tore the page in half. I looked around the room, no cameras, no footprints by the door, no one outside in the hallway. But in the shard of glass, I saw something move behind me. I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, my reflection was smiling. I should have thrown it out the window. I should have buried it deep in the forest, far from any light. But instead, I covered it with a towel and shoved it inside my closet. I told myself I'd take it to the dump later. Only, every time I passed by the closet, I could hear faint tapping. Like fingernails against glass. Tap. 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 Slow at first, then faster when I tried to ignore it. By the third night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I opened the closet, and the shard was gone. I didn't find it until morning. It was sitting on the kitchen table, uncovered, perfectly clean, the towel folded neatly beside it. My reflection looked pale and sleepless, but normal. Until I blinked. When my eyes opened again, I wasn't alone in the reflection. Behind me stood the woman from the house, her hand resting gently on my shoulder, her eyes glassy, her smile the same as the one from the photographs. I spun around, knocking over a chair, nothing. Just my kitchen, silent and still. But in the mirror, she stayed. Her fingers tightened on my shoulder, in the reflection only, and I could feel it. A chill pressing into my skin. She leaned in closer, whispering something I could almost understand. A hum, like the sound of static between words. Then, clear as glass. You look so much like him. That was the first night I blacked out. When I woke, it was dawn. The mirror shard was once again on the floor, my hands were bleeding, and my kitchen lights were shattered. On the wall, written in something dark and sticky, were 3 words. See through me. I didn't go to work after that. I couldn't. Days passed, or maybe weeks. The curtain stayed closed. I stopped answering my phone. The mirror moved on its own now, from the floor to the desk, from the desk to the bathroom. Sometimes, I'd find it propped up right beside my bed, reflecting me as I slept. Except sometimes, it wasn't me sleeping. It was something wearing my face, but its eyes were open. The last time I saw my own reflection was a week ago. It was raining hard, thunder shaking the windows. I remember standing by the mirror, whispering to it, begging it to let me go. That's when it spoke. Not with words, but through movement. My reflection began to breathe differently, exhaling when I inhaled, inhaling when I exhaled, like it was alive on the other side. Then, without warning, it stepped forward. I watched, frozen, as its hand pressed against the inside of the glass. And when I raised my own hand to push it away, the surface wasn't cold anymore. It was warm. Flesh warm. The reflection smiled again. You've looked long enough, it said, my voice echoing perfectly. Then it whispered, almost tenderly. Your turn. The glass rippled. And everything went dark. They found my apartment 2 days later. The neighbors called when they heard glass breaking and a man screaming. The police broke down the door, found the room empty, no body, no sign of struggle. Just one thing left in the center of the floor. A mirror shard. And in it, the faint outline of a man, staring back, eyes wide open. Some nights, I think I can still hear the tapping. From the other side. Waiting for someone else to look long enough.